Hi everyone. Today we're talking about what awakening actually is, and then we're also talking about the fact that loneliness and isolation does seem to be part and parcel of awakening, or at least parts of awakening, and we're going to look at why this is. So okay, let me begin at the beginning. The inverted matrix in which we find ourselves, right? It programs us to be separate. And it does this in many ways. So firstly, through the media, then of course, the financial systems. And this trickles down into families, right? And people, in other words, experience trauma, because the main message is that we should outsource our sense of self, right? So I apologize if you hear the leaf blower in the back. We should outsource our sense of self. And yes, we are social beings, but we are being programmed to seek validation externally. And at the same time, the family unit is being divided, right? It is being put under a lot of pressure, and this leads to trauma. Okay, so when you are a little kid and you experience trauma, you can go one of two ways. Now remember, trauma doesn't necessarily always have to be, you know, an extreme thing. It could just be not feeling heard, right? Or not feeling loved, or not feeling seen. And this is so normal in our reality. So, okay, when a child experiences trauma, it can go in one of two directions. So the one direction is the child becomes less emotional, right? They suppress their emotions because they've now learned that, you know, their emotions aren't being heard, so they become less emotional. The other side is to become more emotional. Now, the extreme of this side would be the narcissist, and the extreme of this side would be the anxious, anxious attached empath, right? Now, we have learned that the anxious attached empath is almost, you know, is the victim, and then the narcissist is the perpetrator. But it's very important to note that there are aspects of narcissism which we're not judging. It's just a word, right? Which means manipulation in both sides. So the person that became less emotional, or at least they're not really less emotional, but they're showing less emotion, right? They go into character disorder, which means everything is everyone else's fault. And then the person who goes into the empathic state becomes more neurotic. In other words, everything is their own fault. Now, psychologists can work with people who are in the empathic state a bit more than actually people who have gone into the character disordered state. Now, the awakening journey obviously has many aspects. One would be research, finding out what's happening in the world, right? Realizing what the forces on the global stage are doing. So this would be, oh, the thing is so annoying. This thing would be, you know, like P. Diddy, Epstein Island, I think it's Whitney Webb. She's absolutely amazing. So what's going on in Hollywood, right? What's going on with the World Economic Forum? What's going on with the World Health Organization? Also, the psychological part of awakening would be more Jungian. This is the spiritual part, right? This is walking the razor's edge, going into Christ consciousness, doing shadow work, questioning the self. Now, the thing is, the more shadow work we do, so, or let me just also say, just knowing about conspiracies, right, is a small part of awakening. There are a large group of people out there who think that this is awakening, and they're judging the people that don't know what's going on the global stage, calling them sheep, you know, and that is still division. A large part of waking up and ascending is integrating duality and therefore transcending it, right? So without judgment, looking at your inner wounds, looking at your inner shadow, and bringing the gold that's within the shadow to light, right? So that would be the Jungian side of awakening. So why does this lead to isolation? So the more shadow work you do, the more authentic you become, right? Because you're not judging the suppressed aspects of yourself anymore. And by default, you're not judging it in the world around you. So you become way more authentic, which actually means that you become more magnetic. So people are more aware of you because you've gone off script and you are being yourself, right? So you're different. You're a firefly in a world of shadows, and people can sense this. So on the one side, you become more magnetic. People become more aware of you, but the moment they get close to you, the clarity of the mirror that you have become is a bit too much, right? Because in order for them to vibe with you, they have to be honest with themselves as well, which means that they can't project their shadow onto you. And some people will find this inspirational, right? And your authenticity will actually give them permission to also be authentic. But most people, unfortunately, due to the programming of the Matrix, will actually try to break this mirror, right? Because it hurts. It shows them where they have not integrated their shadow and where they are denying their true self. So this is very odd, because when you walk into a room and you've done a lot of work, you can legitimately sense that some people hate your guts, right? You haven't done anything, but some people hate your guts because you've gone off script. And as I've said in the past, when we're still part of the Matrix, right? When we haven't seen through the programming, when we haven't started to heal our own wounds and really do the shadow work and question our assumptions, we are irritated by somebody who does this, right? Because the whole system has been geared to protect itself from growth by shaming the individual. You know, that whole thing of don't rock the boat, don't be too strange, we all actually have to fit in, don't be selfish. But this is internalized self-hatred that the Matrix actually encourages, right? It actually encourages it. And it's so weird because we'll have all these movies like Divergent, what's the other movie, Equilibrium, oh my goodness, my brain just left my body, V for Vendetta, right? The Matrix. We have these movies and people will definitely root for the outsider, root for the rebel. But in real life, right, when that actually starts to happen, it triggers people. So this leads to loneliness. But this loneliness is actually part and parcel of the beautiful part of awakening. It is like a bandwidth of solitude that a person needs to move through in order to truly pull back all the projections from others and have that collapse, so that you can look at the self and then individuation can happen. So Jung talks about individuation as well as integration, right? So those two sound like they're opposites of the spectrum, and indeed they are, but we are transcending duality. So a person needs to develop a very good ego before the ego can be transcended. Otherwise, it's just like the Borg in Star Trek, right? Otherwise, we are just in the oceanic consciousness in which babies find themselves before they start developing an identity. So this is, once again, a divine dichotomy. You have to be the most you that you can be before integration. So individuation needs to happen before integration. And the Matrix has been set up in a way so that when people start to individuate, the whole vibe that comes from the group is, how dare you? Who do you think you are? Do you think you're special? But it is people suppressing their own uniqueness and their own specialness and their own beauty, and then expecting you to do that. And we can't be angry with this, but it is very, very isolating, right? And then we become used to this isolation. We don't need validation from the outside, and then the real individuation and integration can start to happen. And just keep on doing the thing, right? Just keep on doing the thing. You will be shocked at the reaction, but eventually your vibe attracts your tribe. And so if we just quickly look at awakening again, it is doing research, finding out what's going on in the world, but it's also finding out what's going on within yourself, looking at your own programming, looking at your own projections. You know, as long as you think the problem is out there, you are powerless to fix it. But once you realize that this is a holographic universe and everything mirrors your internal world, then you can start to know thyself and heal thyself by loving thyself and then loving the outside world. So that's it for today. Have a lovely day, guys.